Jordan Carter stepped onto the plane, his tall frame moving with quiet confidence. He wore a simple gray hoodie and faded jeans, blending seamlessly into the crowd of travelers. To anyone watching, he was just another passenger boarding flight, 307 to New York City. No one could have guessed that this unassuming man was worth billions, thanks to his tech startup that had revolutionized mobile payments. Jordan liked it that way. Fame and flashy lifestyles weren't for him. He preferred staying grounded, connecting with people as equals. As he made his way down the narrow aisle, Jordan noticed how packed the flight was. Families with restless children, business people buried in their laptops, and tourists clutching oversized maps filled every seat. Finally, he reached his assigned spot near the back, a middle seat beside the window. With a polite nod, he greeted the woman already seated by the window before settling in. His carry-on bag slipped easily into the overhead compartment, its contents modest: a book, a water bottle, and noise-canceling headphones. At the front of the cabin, Claire Bennett adjusted her uniform tie and took a deep breath. It had been a long day. Between juggling demanding passengers, dealing with delayed flights, and managing her own worries about mounting bills at home, she felt stretched thin. Her manager's voice echoed in her mind from earlier. Keep your cool no matter what. But keeping calm wasn't always easy when life outside work seemed determined to test her limits. Claire approached Jordan's row to assist with last-minute requests before takeoff. As she leaned over to ask if he needed anything, something caught her eye, a small smudge on his hoodie sleeve. Without thinking, she pointed it out. "Excuse me, sir," she said briskly. "You might want to be more careful. That stain looks fresh." Jordan glanced at his sleeve, surprised but not offended. "Oh, thanks," he replied softly, offering a warm smile. "I'll clean it up later." But Claire didn't soften. Instead, frustration bubbled inside her. She thought about all the entitled passengers she'd dealt with lately. Those who snapped their fingers like royalty, or complained incessantly about trivial things. For some reason, Jordan's laid-back demeanor struck a nerve. Maybe it was his casual appearance or the fact that he didn't seem fazed by her comment. Whatever it was, her patience wavered. "Sir," she continued sharply, "we're about to take off. Please make sure everything is secure, including yourself." Her tone carried an edge that even surprised her. Jordan raised an eyebrow slightly but nodded politely. "Got it. Thanks again." As Claire moved away, guilt flickered across her face. Why had she reacted so harshly? Was it really because of a tiny stain? Or was it something deeper, her exhaustion, her stress, the weight of feeling invisible, in a job where she gave so much yet often received little appreciation? Meanwhile, Jordan sat quietly, observing the flurry of activity around him. He noticed Claire's tense posture and weary eyes. Something told him there was more to her sharp words than met the eye. Rather than taking offense, he chose to let it go, for now. The plane began taxiing down the runway, engines roaring to life. Outside, clouds stretched endlessly against the horizon. Inside, two worlds collided silently, one defined by privilege and understanding, the other by struggle and strain. Neither Jordan nor Claire realized how profoundly this flight would change them both. The plane soared smoothly through the sky, its engines humming steadily as passengers settled into their routines. Some flipped open laptops, others scrolled through phones, and a few closed their eyes for a quick nap. Jordan leaned back in his seat, pulling out the book he'd brought along, a worn copy of Man's Search for Meaning. He found comfort in its pages, often reflecting on how life's challenges shaped who we are. Claire, meanwhile, moved up and down the aisle with practiced efficiency. Her tray cart rattled slightly as she served drinks and snacks to passengers. Despite her earlier sharpness toward Jordan, she tried to maintain a cheerful demeanor. Smiling at each traveler felt like second nature, even if it didn't always reach her eyes. But beneath her polite exterior, her mind raced with worries about unpaid rent and her mother's medical bills. When Claire reached Jordan's row, she paused briefly, hesitating before speaking. "Would you like something to drink?" she asked, her tone neutral this time. Jordan looked up from his book, meeting her gaze with calm eyes. "Water would be great, thank you." As Claire handed him the small plastic cup, an older man sitting across the aisle called out impatiently, "Excuse me, can I get another soda? This one's barely half full." His voice carried a hint of irritation that drew glances from nearby passengers. Claire forced a tight smile and turned to address the complaint. "Of course, sir. Let me grab that for you right away." She hurried to refill his cup, but her frustration simmered just below the surface. Dealing with difficult passengers was part of the job, but today felt especially draining. Returning to Jordan's row moments later, Claire accidentally bumped the edge of her tray cart against his armrest. The impact caused Jordan's water cup to tip over, spilling onto his hoodie sleeve. Instinctively, he pulled back, startled but not angry. "Oh, no harm done," he said quickly, grabbing a napkin to dab at the damp spot. But Claire froze, mortified. In her exhaustion, she misinterpreted his reaction as annoyance. Her face flushed red as memories of rude passengers flooded her mind. People who sneered or demanded apologies when minor mishaps occurred. Before she could stop herself, her emotions boiled over. "You know what?" she snapped, her voice rising louder than intended. "If you're going to act so entitled over spilled water, maybe you shouldn't fly commercial." Her words hung in the air, sharp and unexpected. Passengers nearby turned to look, some curious, others uncomfortable. Jordan blinked, caught off guard by the sudden outburst. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Then, without warning, Claire slapped the side of Jordan's shoulder, not hard enough to hurt, but enough to make her point clear. It was an impulsive action born of stress and pent-up frustration, one she immediately regretted. Her hand flew to her mouth as realization dawned. What had she just done? Jordan stared at her, his expression unreadable. He didn't raise his voice or retaliate. Instead, he simply sat there processing the situation. Quietly, he set the soggy napkin aside and met her wide-eyed gaze. "I'm sorry if I came across the wrong way," he said evenly. "That wasn't my intention." His calm response only deepened Claire's shame. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes as she stammered. I'm so sorry. That was completely unprofessional. Please. Forgive me." Passengers began whispering among themselves, some shaking their heads disapprovingly while others glanced sympathetically at Claire. The tension in the cabin grew palpable. Claire stepped back, clutching the tray cart tightly as if it might anchor her to reality. She wanted nothing more than to disappear. Jordan watched her silently, his thoughts swirling. He saw the cracks in her composure, the exhaustion etched into her features, the trembling hands gripping the cart. Something told him this incident wasn't really about him. There was pain behind her actions, though he couldn't yet understand its source. For now, he chose to let the moment pass. Turning back to his book, he murmured softly, almost to himself, "We all have bad days." Though outwardly calm, Jordan couldn't shake the weight of what had just happened. And Claire, retreating to the galley to collect herself, knew she'd crossed a line she couldn't easily undo. Both were left grappling with the ripple effects of a single reckless act, and neither realized how much it would shape the rest of their journey. In the cramped galley at the back of the plane, Claire leaned against the counter, her hands trembling as she clutched a damp towel. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing the weight of what she had just done. She replayed the moment over and over in her mind. The slap, the shocked faces of passengers, Jordan's calm yet piercing gaze. How could she have lost control like that? Her reflection in the small mirror above the sink stared back at her, pale and stricken. "You're better than this," she whispered to herself, though the words felt hollow. The stress of her life outside work, mounting bills, her mother's declining health, the relentless pressure to keep everything together, had finally caught up with her, but none of that excused her behavior. Taking a deep breath, she tried to steady herself, wiping away the tears that threatened to spill. Back in his seat, Jordan sat quietly, staring out the window at the endless expanse of clouds. His hoodie sleeve was still damp from the spilled water, but he barely noticed. Instead, his thoughts drifted to Claire. Why had she reacted so strongly? He'd encountered rudeness before, but this felt different. There was something raw and vulnerable beneath her anger, something that tugged at his empathy. Deciding to give her space, Jordan turned his attention to the book in his lap. Yet every few minutes his eyes would flick toward the galley where Claire had disappeared. He couldn't shake the image of her tear-filled eyes, or the way her voice had cracked when she apologized. Something about her struck him as deeply human. Flawed, yes, but also hurting. Minutes later, Claire emerged from the galley, her face composed, but her movements stiff. She resumed her duties, forcing a smile as she served snacks to passengers. When she reached Jordan's row again, her steps faltered. For a brief second, their eyes met, and she saw no trace of anger in his expression, only quiet understanding. It made her feel even worse. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Jordan shook his head. "No, thank you. Everything's fine." Claire hesitated, then added, I really am sorry about earlier. That shouldn't have happened." He nodded slowly, his tone gentle. "I appreciate the apology. We all make mistakes." His words caught her off guard. They weren't dismissive or condescending. They were kind. Too kind, given what she'd done. Claire felt a lump rise in her throat. She wanted to explain, herself to tell him why she'd snapped, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she forced another weak smile and moved on, her guilt lingering like a shadow. Later, during a lull in her duties, Claire found herself standing near the cockpit door, staring blankly at the floor. One of her colleagues, Rachel Dude, approached cautiously. "Hey, are you okay?" Rachel asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "I heard what happened with that guy in 27C. Is everything all right?" Claire sighed, rubbing her temples. "I don't know how to fix it. I completely lost it back there. He didn't deserve that." Rachel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We've all been there, Claire. This job isn't easy, especially when you're carrying so much outside of it. Just try to breathe and focus on finishing the flight. You'll figure things out." Though Rachel's words offered some comfort, they didn't erase the heaviness in Claire's chest. She glanced down the aisle toward Jordan's seat, noticing how he interacted warmly with the woman seated beside him. He laughed at something she said, his demeanor relaxed and open. It amazed Claire how someone could remain so composed after being treated so poorly. As the hours passed, Claire continued working, her movements mechanical. Every time she passed Jordan, she avoided meeting his eyes, afraid of what she might see. Yet despite her shame, a part of her wondered if he'd say something, anything to address what had happened. Would he report her to the airline, demand compensation, or worse, ignore her entirely? Unbeknownst to Claire, Jordan was wrestling with his own thoughts. He wasn't angry, but he couldn't deny that the incident stayed with him. As the plane descended toward New York City, he made a decision. Whatever pain or frustration Claire was carrying, it didn't define her. Everyone deserved a chance to be understood, and perhaps in this unlikely encounter there was an opportunity to connect. The wheels of the plane touched down gently on the runway, jolting both Claire and Jordan back to reality. Passengers began, gathering their belongings, eager to disembark. Claire stood by the exit, offering polite farewells as people filed past. When Jordan approached, suitcase in hand, she braced herself for whatever came next. Instead of judgment or anger, he stopped briefly and said, "Take care of yourself, okay?" The simplicity of his words hit Claire harder than any lecture could have. She managed a small nod, her voice failing her once again. As Jordan walked away, disappearing into the crowd, Claire realized that this stranger had shown her more compassion than she'd shown herself. And in that moment, she vowed to do better, not just for others, but for herself. As Jordan stepped off the plane and into the bustling terminal, he felt a strange mix of emotions. The encounter with Claire lingered in his mind, not because of her actions, but because of the vulnerability he'd glimpsed behind them. He had seen it before, In boardrooms, on city streets, even within himself during moments of struggle. Pain often wore many masks, and Claire's had briefly slipped. He adjusted the strap of his carry-on bag and made his way through the crowded airport. Business travelers rushed past him, their polished shoes clicking against the tiled floor, while families clustered around baggage carousels, laughing and arguing in equal measure. Amidst the chaos, Jordan moved quietly, drawing little attention, despite the quiet confidence that radiated from him. At the exit, a sleek black car idled, curbside, its driver standing patiently beside it. "Mr. Carter," the man greeted with a respectful nod, opening the rear door for him. Jordan slid inside, the leather seats cool and inviting. As the car pulled away from the curb, he glanced out the tinted window at the sprawling cityscape beyond. New York City always felt alive, energetic, relentless, and full of possibility. Meanwhile, back at the airport, Claire stood by the gate, watching passengers file out until the last one disappeared. Her shift wasn't over yet. There were post-flight duties to complete, forms to fill out, and debriefings with her supervisor. But none of that mattered as much as the weight pressing down on her chest. She replayed Jordan's final words in her mind. "Take care of yourself, okay?" They haunted her, not because they were harsh, but because they were kind. After finishing her tasks, Claire trudged toward the employee lounge to collect her belongings. The room was nearly empty except for Rachel, who sat scrolling through her phone. Looking up, Rachel gave Claire a sympathetic smile. "How are you holding up?" Claire shrugged, sinking onto a nearby chair. "I don't know, I feel awful. That guy didn't deserve what I did. He was so calm about it too, like he didn't even care." Rachel tilted her head thoughtfully. "Maybe he didn't. Some people are just different, you know? Not everyone takes things personally." Claire sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Still, I can't stop thinking about it. Who does that to someone? I'm supposed to be professional, not lose it like that." Her voice trailed off as she stared at the floor, lost in thought. What would happen now? Would Jordan report her? Could she lose her job over this? The uncertainty gnawed at her, making it hard to focus. Unbeknownst to Claire, Jordan was already several miles away, seated in a high-rise office overlooking Central Park. His assistant, Maya, handed him a stack of documents related to an upcoming charity event. "The gala is tomorrow evening," she reminded him. "Do you need me to confirm your speech notes?" Jordan nodded absently, his thoughts drifting back to the flight. He tapped his pen against the desk, debating whether or not to act on the why idea forming in his mind. Finally, he turned to Maya. "Do me a favor. Find out which airline that flight attendant works for, and see if you can get her contact information." Maya raised an eyebrow, curious but professional. "Of course. Anything specific you're looking for?" "Not yet," Jordan replied with a faint smile. "Just, let's see where this goes." Later that evening, Claire returned home to her small apartment, exhausted both physically and emotionally. The space was modest, a single bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and mismatched furniture. But it was hers. She kicked off her shoes and collapsed, onto the couch staring blankly at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, lighting up with notifications. Most were bills or reminders, none of which improved her mood. Then, unexpectedly, a text message appeared from an unknown number. "Hi, Claire. This is Jordan Carter. I hope you're doing well." Claire's heart skipped a beat. She read the message again, certain she must be imagining things. Why would he reach out to her after everything that happened? Hesitantly, she typed a reply. "Mr. Carter? I'm so sorry about earlier. Please, let me explain." Before she could send it, another message came through. "No explanation needed. We all have tough days. I just wanted to check in and make sure you're all right." Tears welled in Claire's eyes as she stared at the screen. His kindness caught her off guard, softening the sharp edges of her guilt. For the first time since the incident, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't defined by her worst moment. Over the next few minutes, they exchanged brief messages. Jordan kept the conversation light, asking how her day went and sharing a bit about his own travels. By the end, Claire felt a flicker of hope, a reminder that compassion could exist even in the most unexpected places. As she set her phone aside, she realized something important. Jordan wasn't just a billionaire. He was someone who understood pain and chose to respond with grace. And in that understanding, she found a glimmer of inspiration to start healing herself. The next morning, Claire woke up to the soft glow of sunlight streaming through her bedroom window. She stretched groggily, her mind still heavy with thoughts of the previous day. As she reached for her phone on the nightstand, she noticed a new notification, a follow-up message from Jordan. "Claire, I'd like to invite you to a charity gala tonight if you're free. It's nothing formal, just an opportunity to meet and talk more. Let me know." Her heart raced as she read the words again and again. A charity gala? Inviting her? It sounded surreal, almost too good to be true. But why would he do that after everything that had happened? Was this some kind of trick or worse, pity? Claire hesitated, staring at the screen. Part of her wanted to decline immediately. What did she have in common with someone like Jordan Carter? He lived in a world of wealth and privilege, while she struggled just to keep her head above water. Yet another part of her, the quieter, braver part, wondered if this might be a chance to step outside her comfort zone. Maybe it was time to stop hiding behind her fears and self-doubt. After a few minutes of deliberation, she typed out a cautious reply. "Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Carter. I appreciate the gesture, but I'm not sure I'd fit in at something like that." Jordan's response came quickly. "Nonsense. You'll do fine. Besides, it's not about fitting in. It's about being yourself. Wear something comfortable, and I'll send a car for you at 6 p.m. Claire stared at the message, her stomach fluttering nervously. How could she say no now? Reluctantly, she agreed, though she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into uncharted territory. Later that evening, Claire stood in front of her closet, debating what to wear. Most of her clothes were practical uniforms or casual, outfits meant for work and errands, not exactly gala material. Finally, she settled on a simple navy blue dress she'd bought years ago for a cousin's wedding. It wasn't glamorous, but it made her feel presentable. Adding minimal makeup and pulling her hair into a neat bun, she took one last look in the mirror before heading downstairs. True to his word, a black sedan arrived promptly at 6 p.m. Driver greeted her warmly and held the door open as she climbed inside. For the first time in days, Claire felt a flicker of excitement mixed with apprehension. Where was this evening going to lead? When they arrived at the venue, a grand hotel overlooking the city lights, Claire stepped out of the car and gazed up at the towering building. Guests mingled under twinkling chandeliers, their laughter echoing softly through open doors. She felt completely out of place, clutching her small purse tightly as she followed the driver inside. At the entrance, Jordan spotted her immediately. Dressed in a tailored suit, he looked every bit the billionaire CEO, yet his smile remained, warm and inviting. "Claire," he said, extending a hand. "I'm glad you came." "Thank you for having me," she replied, her voice tinged with nervousness. "This is quite the event." Jordan chuckled lightly. "Don't worry, you're among friends here. Come, let me introduce you to a few people." As they walked through the room together, Claire noticed how effortlessly Jordan navigated the crowd. He introduced her to colleagues, philanthropists, and even a famous actress who complimented her dress. Though overwhelmed, Claire found herself relaxing slightly, buoyed by Jordan's genuine encouragement. During a quiet moment near the balcony, Jordan turned to her. "I hope you're enjoying yourself. I know tonight might feel overwhelming, but I wanted to show you that kindness isn't limited to one world or another." Claire nodded slowly, touched by his thoughtfulness. "I don't understand why you're doing all this for me," she admitted. "After what I did, I wouldn't blame you for wanting nothing to do with me." Jordan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We all make mistakes, Claire. What matters is what we learn from them, and how we choose to move forward. You've already shown courage by coming here tonight." His words struck a chord deep within her. For so long she'd defined herself by her struggles and failures. But standing there, surrounded by warmth and acceptance, she began to see herself differently, not as someone broken, but as someone capable of growth. By the end of the evening, Claire realized something profound. Jordan wasn't just offering her a night to remember, he was giving her a glimpse of possibility. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe in second chances. The charity gala lingered in Claire's mind long after the final toast and the twinkling lights of the hotel faded into memory. As the car drove her home, she stared out the window, replaying the evening in her head. Jordan had been nothing but kind, introducing her to strangers who treated her with respect, sharing stories that made her laugh, and offering quiet encouragement when she felt out of place. It was surreal, almost dreamlike, yet undeniably real. When she arrived back at her apartment, Claire hesitated before stepping inside. The dimly lit hallway felt smaller somehow, less welcoming than it had before. She unlocked the door and walked in, dropping her purse on the kitchen counter. Her reflection in the mirror caught her eye, a tired woman staring back but with a glimmer of something new. Hope. For years, Claire had carried the weight of her struggles alone, convinced that no one would understand or care. But tonight had shown her otherwise. Jordan's actions weren't just about forgiveness, they were about connection. He had seen her, not as a flight attendant who'd made a mistake, but as a person worthy of kindness and understanding. The next morning, Claire woke up earlier than usual. Instead of dreading the day ahead, she found herself eager to face it. Sitting at her small dining table with a cup of coffee, she opened her laptop and began searching for resources to help manage her stress. There were articles on mindfulness, videos about self-care, and even local support groups for people juggling multiple responsibilities. For the first time in months, she felt proactive instead of paralyzed. At work later that day, Claire approached her duties with renewed energy. When a passenger complained loudly about a delayed flight, she took a deep breath and responded calmly, remembering Jordan's advice. What matters is how we choose to move forward. To her surprise, the passenger softened under her composed demeanor, apologizing for their initial frustration. It was a small victory, but it reminded her of the power of patience and empathy. Meanwhile, Jordan sat in his office, reviewing notes from the gala. The event had gone smoothly, raising significant funds for underprivileged youth programs, a cause close to his heart. Yet, as he flipped through photos taken during the evening, his thoughts kept returning to Claire. He admired her courage for attending despite her discomfort. Few people would have accepted such an unconventional invitation, let alone navigated it with grace. Curious to see how she was doing, Jordan sent her a brief text. "How are you feeling today? I hope last night wasn't too overwhelming." Claire smiled when she saw the message. His thoughtfulness still amazed her. She replied honestly, "It was different, in a good way. Thank you again for everything, Mr. Carter. You didn't have to do any of it." Jordan's response came quickly. "Call me Jordan, please." And yes, I did. It's important to lift each other up when we can. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to help. His words stayed with her throughout the day, planting seeds of possibility. Maybe she didn't have to carry her burdens alone anymore. Maybe reaching out for help wasn't a sign of weakness, but strength. Later that week, Claire decided to take a bold step. During her lunch break, she visited a nearby community center offering free counseling services. Though hesitant at first, she soon found herself opening up to the counselor about her financial struggles, her mother's medical bills, and the constant pressure she felt to keep everything together. Talking about it aloud brought unexpected relief, like releasing a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. Inspired by this experience, Claire began making changes in her life. She started setting boundaries at work, learning to say no when necessary and asking for support when needed. She also reached out to friends she hadn't spoken to in months, reconnecting over shared meals and heartfelt conversations. Slowly but surely, She rebuilt her sense of self-worth, one small action at a time. One evening, while scrolling through social media, Claire stumbled upon a post from Jordan's company, announcing a new initiative aimed at supporting frontline workers like flight attendants. The program offered scholarships, mental health resources, and leadership training opportunities, all designed to empower employees in high-stress industries. Reading the details, Claire couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude. Whether intentional or not, Jordan seemed to be creating pathways for people like her to thrive. As weeks turned into months, Claire noticed subtle shifts within herself. She laughed more, worried less, and embraced challenges with resilience, rather than fear. The incident on the plane remained a part of her story, but it no longer defined her. Instead, it became a turning point, a reminder that even in moments of weakness, there was always room for growth. And though she hadn't seen Jordan since the gala, his impact lingered in ways she never expected. Through his kindness, he had shown her that everyone deserved a second chance, including herself. Months passed, and Claire's life continued to transform in ways she never imagined. The changes weren't dramatic or instantaneous, but they were steady, like the slow blooming of a flower after winter. She had started attending leadership workshops through Jordan's company initiative, gaining confidence in her abilities both at work and in her personal life. Her colleagues noticed the shift too. Claire was calmer, more assertive, and willing to advocate for herself when needed. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Claire walked home from work, her phone buzzed with an unexpected call. Glancing at the screen, she saw Jordan's name flash across. It. Her heart skipped a beat. Though they'd exchanged occasional texts since the gala, their conversations had been brief and polite. This felt different somehow. "Hi, Jordan," she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Is everything okay?" Jordan chuckled softly on the other end. "Everything's fine, Claire. I just wanted to check in. How have you been?" Claire smiled, leaning against a park bench as leaves swirled around her feet. "I've been good. Better than I expected, honestly. Your program has helped so much. Not just me, but others too. People are starting to see themselves differently because of it." "That's wonderful to hear," Jordan replied warmly. "But tell me about you. What's changed for you personally?" She thought for a moment, reflecting on how far she'd come. "I guess I've learned to stop running myself into the ground. I used to think I had to handle everything alone, but now I know it's okay to ask for help. And honestly, that night at the gala made me realize that people can surprise you in the best way possible." Jordan paused, his tone thoughtful. "You surprised me too, Claire. You showed incredible strength by showing up that night, even though you didn't have to. Not many people would do that." His words brought tears to her eyes, not out of sadness, but gratitude. For so long, she'd carried guilt and shame over the incident on the plane, but Jordan's kindness had taught her something invaluable. Forgiveness wasn't just for others, it was for herself too. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. I don't know if I'll ever be able to repay you." "You don't need to," Jordan responded gently. "Just keep paying it forward, that's all I ask." There was a comfortable silence between them before Jordan spoke again. "Actually, there's another reason I called. I'm hosting a small gathering next weekend, a mix of old friends and new connections. I'd love for you to join us. Think of it as a chance to celebrate how far you've come." Claire hesitated, memories of the gala flooding back. Part of her still felt out of place in such settings, but another part, the stronger, braver part, knew she couldn't let fear hold her back anymore. "I'd love to," she said finally, surprising even herself with her confidence. The following Saturday, Claire arrived at the venue, a cozy rooftop lounge overlooking the city skyline. Twinkling fairy lights draped overhead created a warm, inviting atmosphere. Guests mingled freely, laughter filling the air. When Jordan spotted her, he greeted her with a genuine smile. "I'm glad you came," he said, leading her toward a group of people. "These are some amazing individuals doing incredible work. I think you'll enjoy meeting them." Throughout, The evening, Claire found herself engaging in meaningful conversations, sharing her story, listening to others, and realizing how interconnected their journeys were. One woman, a single mother who ran a nonprofit supporting struggling families, resonated deeply with Claire. They exchanged numbers, promising to stay in touch. As the night drew to a close, Jordan pulled Claire aside. "So, what did you think?" "It was perfect," she admitted, her eyes shining with sincerity. "I never thought I'd feel like I belonged somewhere like this. Thank you for believing in me." Jordan shook his head slightly. "It wasn't my belief that mattered. It was yours. You've done the hard work, Claire. All I did was remind you that you're capable of more than you think." In that moment, Claire understood something profound. Jordan's generosity wasn't about fixing her problems. It was about empowering her to face them. He had given her not just opportunities, but faith in herself. As they stood together under the starlit sky, two lives intertwined by an unlikely encounter, Claire realized that second chances weren't just about redemption, they were about connection. And sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could create ripples that changed everything. This final part ties together the themes of growth, gratitude, and human connection, leaving readers with a sense of hope and inspiration. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments.